And we are live. Hi, everybody. Chryssa Skodra here. This is another episode of Connections Unplugged from LinkedIn to Live. This show is broadcasted live multi-stream to LinkedIn, Facebook, both my profile and my page, Chryssa Skodra, and my YouTube channel. So this is what I do. I multi-stream this episode and this podcast series to three of my preferred destinations and social media platforms. And in this series, I get a chance every week to speak to an inspirational, insightful guest, one of my LinkedIn connections. I have about 5,000 people connected to me. I'm very happy to have such a great network of professionals and people. And I want to bring them to the forefront, to introduce my friends, my LinkedIn connections to you out there. Allow me today to welcome to the studio and add him here to OneStream Live studio, Hubert Grealish. Welcome, Hubert.
Hello, hi, Chryssa, and hi to all your followers and friends.
Hi, thank you for joining me today. You have about 14,000 of your own followers and friends. You have your own network. You see, I honor you today with the Irish green. How do I look?
Oh, bless you. Thank you.
So you're an Irishman.
Good, lucky color.
It is actually. It's one of my. It's my favorite color. I must say, the favorite color.
Good. That's me too. Me too.
Yeah. You're from Ireland originally. You have a very impressive profile. Allow me to say a couple of words for the people out there. And of course, if you're watching us on LinkedIn or you have LinkedIn app on your phone already or in your browser, go check out Hubert Grealish. The headline reads, Elevation, Impact, Trust, your international brand communications and marketing partner. You have such an inspirational career. We do have a lot of things in common. You have a similar background to me in media, journalism, communications, branding. But tell us, please, a little bit. I'd like to go back in time. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. And then we come to sort of your past, your present, and where you're heading to in the future.
Thanks, Chryssa. And it's a really excellent question because I think it's actually a great question to kick off with. So I'm from the west of Ireland, a place called Galway, and my mother's from the south of Ireland, Cork, and we come from a musical and storytelling oral tradition. And I think that's a great backdrop to how we move forward in my generation towards communication, as it's commonly known now. But from my background, a lot of our culture is storytelling and in music, not unlike Greece, where you're from, or many of the, indigenous cultures of the world. So we've always had a fascination with the truth of storytelling and multimedia, if you want, musical connections, and just living for stories. I find that's a really big passion of mine. My earlier fascinations in career-wise were architectural technology and how society talks to itself, how we build things. But the long arc of construction and building takes years, whereas now, as we see with technology, much more exponential opportunity with the internet. We've got the trading of attention and ideas as well. So we live in a fascinating time, not without its responsibilities, but my passions are connecting people with stories and culture.
When you were young, was your mother reading fairy tales and telling you stories? What is the early memories you have in life growing in Ireland? How storytelling?
Well, my mother, the kettle was always on. There's always tea. The front door was always open growing up. The house was never locked, I don't think. I never had a key. But I remember my uncle, he would drive around rural Cork with no stereo or radio, but he would sing all the time. So we were always singing in his countryside car growing up. So you grow up with 1,000 songs in your head from repetition and storytelling, and a lot of folk songs. And folk songs are an interesting vehicle for telling their own stories and truths. And we generally sing for the song. We don't sing for ourselves. So we kind of channel those energies. And there's an element of the mystic to it as well, I believe that, because we tend to touch on greater things, greater than ourselves, greater than our egos. And it's a beautiful thing when you can capture those things and, if you like, channel them and relay them onto others in a passionate and beautiful, articulate way. And I'd like to think that I bring that forward in my own way, as indeed, everyone does. But it's certainly a beautiful thing to admire and to emulate, if you want, with technology these days.
You said about storytelling and music and musicality. Correct me if I'm wrong, but have you been in a band? What's your connection to music growing up, apart from being a listener to songs? Are you a musician? Have you had a band growing up? How were you as a teenager?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't expecting that question, genuinely. I have been a busker and I have been in bands and I am a singer, but I always say, people will say, are you a singer? And I'll say, no, I'm a vocalist, because I don't want that kind of responsibility. And that kind of gets me cheekily around the corner to allow myself to feel things. I admire people who study music, study the music disciplines for years, but I'm very much a play it by ear kind of person. And I like songwriting. I like playing with words. I play with the craft of words. My work life and my home life are often blended in terms of how we use words and music and tonalities. I'm really into that. And I'm also a little bit of a beatboxer, and I'm a bit of a freestyler. I'll try anything, actually.
Can you give us, now I have to ask you, give us a little sample. Be brave.
Oh, you definitely catch me out, but I won't let an opportunity pass. Ready? Okay.
All right.
Here's the beat. Ready?
What's up, everybody? Connections.
I'm on the call with Chryssa now. She's going to tell me how to big shout out. She says she's the Greek goddess. I got the don't mess with Chryssa message on her green breast. She's come from North Place, the north of Athens. It doesn't matter what the words are going to happen. My name is Hubert. I'm here not to flirt. I'm here to talk to you in my denim blue shirt. But hey, let's get on with the show today, because it's going on 5:45. Okay. And then we're going to go home to our family, say yay, put the kettle on and have a talk to the missus and the kids and the boys and girls and put them to bed and give us a twirl.
Yeah! You're such a good sport. Thank you so much. I just love, this show is unscripted. Everybody watching us, wherever you are from, whatever you're doing, and you're watching this at the moment live, this is totally unscripted. These are
unscripted, definitely spontaneous, freestyle words. I had to leave it up. I throw it down to you now. Yeah, all your other guests, get them to do that too.
I'll make sure to, yes, that's a good point. But of course, not everybody's as talented as you are. So, storyteller, musician, who loves folk music, who loves the truth, who loves purpose. So we were there. So what can you do? So storytelling, musicality, freestyling, creativity. It seems to me that you're a person who is very alert. You're highly sensitive, meaning getting a lot of inspiration from just observing the world go by. Is that true? Or where do you drive your inspiration? What inspires you? Where do you take this? Why you become like this? How you turned up like this? And is the blessing or a curse? Lots to unpack.
Yeah, lots to unpack. I suppose my belief system, if you want to put a coin a phrase, is I do believe everyone has something to offer. And I know it's a cliche, and I do believe everyone is a person. And to move on a little bit from the music, I would say, people say, oh, I'm not a singer. I believe everyone can sing, because nearly everyone sings in the shower. So birds are singing in the trees, and I think it's okay to be philosophical to a point. And I always like to feel it's good. Anything I do is to give your future guests or anyone who sees this the opportunity or the permission to do it for themselves. So I don't mind to throw myself out there to kind of pave the way for whoever is wanting to try it as well. And hopefully someone is coming along better than me at it. And that's okay. That gives me permission, ironically, to make my best effort to be my own unique self. That doesn't mean that I'm not a nervous person or we get scared of stuff. But then I always say that is the direction. Let fear be the way, almost. So I conquer little things all the time, and I'll throw myself out there to acquire new skills or try things out. But also, I'm also aware that we don't really grow if we don't test ourselves or make sure that we're making a little bit of fun about ourselves. And as I say, the shortest distance between strangers is laughter. And translate that into the corporate environment. And I believe that if you have a safe place, a safe space, people can enjoy working together. They can express their views. Neurodivergent people have skills as much as other people, but maybe we need a new conversation on how to work in those scenarios. It's quite an exciting time, but also we're in an era when up to the minute now we have AIs coming along, and there's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of noise as well, but ultimately we are in a human business. We're still in a very human world, even though the technologists may not like to tell us that. There's still humans typing the keyboards. So we still have a chance to remain at the helm, remain critical, remain creative, and remain humorous about how we want to go forward into the fog of this new AI era. So there's a lot to unpack there. But as what makes me go forward is my values are things like, obviously, playful sometimes, but I dare say I'm quite strategic as well, because I know how it feels you have to get the job done. And there's a time for all sorts of modularities or personalities. And I do believe that by keeping the door open, you can recruit and lead teams in different ways. But also leadership is about having different skill sets and different types of ways of different flags you need to, or different hats you need to wear at different times of the day. Not unlike Edward de Bono's 7 thinking hats. You have to have 7 different personalities as well these days.
You are indeed this person who are a very Renaissance man, or back in from the ancient times, from ancient Greece. People were astronomers and mathematicians and musicians, and everything was exciting. They were interested in a variety of things. They were curious. They had that innate curiosity. They wanted to solve problems. They wanted to better themselves, to better their lives. You come across as a person, as I said, very multi-talented and in the intersection of a lot of things. And I believe, if you would draw a diagram, and this is what you're good at, and this is what you also good at, and this, you're at the center of a variety of disciplines, of a variety of forces. And I think I've always said that this is where the magic happens, when we are merging and cross-pollinate. And as you said, you're humorous, and you can, you don't take so much serious, you're not so stuck up and, having this stiff upper lip, but also at the same time, you're very strategic, you're very professional, you carry yourself well, you're able to express yourself properly, and so on. So I think this is the right balance you strike, and at least you seem to me that a very fun person, but also very professional. How do you find, tell us a little bit about your career. I know that you have worked for major corporations and brands, and tell us a little bit about your life before Finland, and now your life in Finland, because you are in Finland for the past years. Tell us a little bit the highlights of your career before this new era, when you arrived to Finland.
Okay, thank you. Well, to touch on, if you like, Renaissance or religious things, what I've just described there about my youth, let's call that jokingly the Old Testament. The New Testament in modernity, in working and career, let's look at that. So taking forward my interest in the communication disciplines, I retrained in a degree of communication and went to work in London in tech PR in the early days of the dot-com boom. So there I got to see this kind of spectacular explosion of .com businesses, and I've had startups myself there also, studentpassengers.com, things. I was making my own experiments, if you like. But that was on the agency side in London. So after some years in London, like 6 or 7 years, I thought, well, that's one prism on the whole landscape of communication. So I felt my next step would be perhaps on the other side of the proverbial client agency table. And I found myself working in a headquarters in Amsterdam for Philips, and then subsequently in Philips Consumer Lifestyle, working on global acquisitions, rebrands, big strategic pieces, if you want, within the matrix organizations. And then with TomTom later to help make it the world's number one sat-nav brand at that time. And then into Diageo, the drinks business, Diageo brands, where I was heading up the vodka, rums and gins categories as the global head of brand communication for all those brands, like Smirnoff, #1 in the world, Captain Morgan, #1. Lots of #1s. But where do you go from there? And from there, I was quite interested to keep learning. And the way I learn is by moving around the room of the communication landscape. And then I decided, well, now we're going to go almost back to basics and start getting all this experience, all this value back into the smaller businesses. Take it a little bit down a peg, get back into the slipstream of opportunity for brands that want to go from B stage to C and so on and so forth. And then I also did 5 years part-time associate professor in digital marketing in Dublin Business School, a leading school there. All the time working with Google and Facebook, some of the biggest brands in tech, and smallest, because I was quite interested in the small ones too, because all the big tech is less than 10 years old, but at least back then, you know. And then I went back to my heart, which was architectural technology, back to the kind of infrastructure work, and car sharing was starting to come into its own. Now, my very first startup that I started, Student Passengers, was built on mobility. Fast forward later on, 15 years in my career, and mobility is coming into its own with car sharing. And then I started democratizing car sharing, and I headed up global marketing, and I built a brand for now Europe's biggest B2B car sharing platform. So I'm very passionate about connecting dots with technology, networks, ecosystems, and people around this purpose. Now, I'm surprised it took me this long to come around to purpose-driven marketing or purpose-driven anything.
Exactly, purpose-driven. Let's keep that. I have a question. This is very interesting. You've touched upon this before, and I've heard it from many other people I've spoken to. When you've been working for those companies, whether they're corporations, big brands, and big companies or startups, what was the one question, or how did you help them identify the purpose, why we're into this business? So if people working in companies and startups listening, and they hired you as a consultant, a person to help them, progress that or help their evolution into the future or the transformation of the company. So how to define purpose and become a purpose-driven company, society, family, person? What would be the way to identify our purpose in life and in business?
That's a great question, because I'd like to think I have a very useful answer. I've gone into some of the other big corporations, invited in to do strategic pieces and to kind of shift people from their comfort zones. I might ask them their mission statement, and there'll be lots of uncomfortable laughs and chuckles around the boardroom. But very rarely you'll meet an executive in a C-suite who will recite the vision and their mission statement. So where do I go with that, apart from not wanting to make people uncomfortable? I want to make people think like they're customers, really. So I devised my own sort of playful but strategic tool, and I call it Brand Treehouse. Letters like Irish 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 points. And first one is It's almost, and this is a real thing I do. We put it into the cafe or the coffee corner. We put it up the poster. I have a poster. I can send it to you. And it's a cartoon of a tree that looks like a tree house. 3 questions. One is, what do we make? And you ask people with their crayon to write down what we make. We make TVs. We make viewing experiences. We make family moments. You know, all the potentials of that. Okay, the second question is, what do you do on that journey? And that person might say, I do accounts, or I do brand strategy, or I do your events. Mm-hmm. And question 3 is, what do we do for society? Mm-hmm. And then people write down, the idea is to be very spontaneous. Write down whatever you think. And even leave it overnight in the cafe. Let people write down their like toilet humor if they want. You don't want people feeling inhibited. You want the truth. And then you bring it back and you put it up and you show all the different answers. And you basically, you'll have a different set every day. And the point of this exercise is to show that for all our best intentions and all our brand design, we don't actually have a brand, but we have a set of people in a dynamic community who have an appetite or a curiosity or a relationship to all these things that we think and say that we do. So we don't actually own the brand. We're custodians for everybody's relationship to what we think we do. So the best way to design our brand is to listen to all these feedback responses, tickets, and view them as talking points. Now, my version of talking points isn't like, oh, here's what you should say. It's actually, here's what we hear. If I hear people say, oh, we make TVs or we create viewing experiences, then we explore that. We create talking points and we find a way to communicate. We talk to those points. We join existing conversations. It's 10% of the budget of our time and effort, or even arrogance, to go out there to say, oh, here's what we are. We're the world's #1 provider of, aren't we? Well, are we? How many? Yeah, that's just so outdated. And I love to make fun of that because it's very important that we are humble enough to get over ourselves. If we go out there and listen to the customer, not just customer centric, I'm even talking post customer centric. Listen to people and let those talking points become your conversation points for future marketing efforts. I've been there, done that in the agency, in the corporates, in the startup worlds, as a founder, as a technologist, near futurist, all those areas. And the only thing that's really true is people's ability to change their minds in a consistent way. So if we're consistently listening, we have a future. If we're consistently force-feeding people, we don't really have a conversation, so we may not have a future.
Let's talk about
So these are exciting tools I've built myself.
Let's talk about future. That leads me to my next question, what popped into my mind. How do brands and people build a legacy? You talked about consistency. You talked about all these 3 different points one needs to consider. How do we, on a professional and personal manner as well, think about our legacy? Perhaps you can touch upon the topic as a twofold question. First, you talk about businesses, companies, brands, how they can leave a legacy behind with a purpose-driven legacy, if you like. And then I would like to ask you about your own legacy. What legacy you want to leave behind as Hubert Grealish? 50 years from now, 60, when you're gone, what do you want people to remember from you? What have you done? What was the core essence of your brand and personal identity?
Yeah, and that's a really beautiful question because we don't ask that of ourselves enough. So I suppose I'll repeat the first part. I want to give everyone else permission to do it and do it better than me. I believe in progress, not perfection. So I believe in sometimes kicking down the barriers, leading from the front and the back and the side to show people that you're willing to learn with them on the journey. So what can companies do better? I believe in terms of brand. Brand is an overstated, overused word, quite meaningless these days. It's actually experience. It's actually I've said many times in the past, over the years, I've written about it in the little black book of PR, right? That marketing only exists because we can't all physically be in every conversation, in every room, ever. So it means we create these tools to tell the message for us. Now, arrogant, older, like late 20th century marketing with budget applied, which leans into the arrogance, force-fed people an agenda which was thank you for smoking. Now the truth is out there. So the opportunity for companies is build great products, tell great stories, and get the credit for it in a meaningful, amplifiable, shareable way. The beauty of marketing, from my perspective, as a sort of a, I love that word Renaissance, but I won't describe myself as a Renaissance marketeer, because sometimes I'm an anti-marketing marketeer as well, because I believe that we're in danger of believing our own Kool-Aid. And I'm really happy that the new generations, we have inadvertently, the digital natives, we have raised to decode our best so-called marketing efforts. They are better at decoding our best campaigns than we are at putting them together. And that's a beautiful thing, because they're going to show us the way forward with authenticity, with integrity, and hopefully we'll give them the value systems. So what can companies do? Companies can be good citizens. Companies can be good, authentic players. Companies can start matching the values of societies. A lot of customers believe in this thing called climate change, not necessarily and only sustainable practices, but actually they can lead the agenda. They can say, okay, I'm really happy with companies like Philips, for instance, years ago, when they'd have massive packaging for a TV, but then looking at all the shipping and cardboard. Now, if you buy something from that company, I bought something recently, you'll see that it's more modular, there's cardboard parts. It's much smarter. And so companies have a chance to be better citizens, not just corporate social responsibility, much, much more. I'm going to shout out to Patagonia. I have no vested interest, but I love companies that walk the talk, because I believe citizens walk the talk.
They're not greenwashing.
They're not greenwashing. And I'm sad to say that, I'm sad to say that corporate agendas can get away with greenwashing, but the good thing is the consumers don't buy it anymore, and it always blows back. So God damn it, tell the truth, build great products, tell great stories, and connect the dots in meaningful, shareable ways. And then you'll be a trusted part of this so-called fabric of society. It's very simple, really, but it's a lot of internal conversations need to be had in the boardroom, and we need to get over ourselves and keep it real useful, real good products, real made simple. Now, my legacy was...
go on.
Yeah, the second part of your question, my legacy would be give people the permission to do it in new or creative ways. They don't have to tell the same story, because if we're telling the same story, we're just limiting and our ideas will dry up. Be human, be creative, give people permission. My legacy would be, I'll be very happy if I've lived up to the values that I hold my clients and my partners up to. And that's not, it doesn't come without its discomfort and its price. It's never easy to really be yourself as a good practitioner, but the joy is there. The rewards are that you're authentic. We're all doing our best. We're not trying to sabotage companies, but it sometimes requires an element of 3, 2, 1, tell the truth.
Yeah,
that requires being brave.
Yes. So you spoke about authenticity and truth. What this brings to my mind is you spoke about both the companies. That was my question was twofold. So companies on the one hand and our personal legacy on the other hand. So, and in both you mentioned the word authenticity. When it comes to economic offer, and we look at brand or companies, so you spoke about AI and the future. So given the technological advancements in our society, and you talked about being a technologist or near futurist, or without even labeling you, you're an intelligent person. So what is your gut feeling regarding the successful companies and businesses of the future? Because you spoke about working and having a career in the dot-com boom, and you've seen how things were done and the economic progression. You've seen the SaaS companies, you've seen the cloud-based, you've seen AI, you've seen, and I must say here that you spoke about the young generation, but I think our generation, I'm 40, I'm turning 41 next week, and you're turning 50 something, or?
Hey, 52.
52, congrats. So I think your generation and my generation are more privileged because we have seen the world before, during, and after big major decisive moments, milestones in from the appearance of the internet, from web uh, 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to God knows what's coming ahead. So we've been privileged. So we have a point of reference. I think the new generation, unfortunately, is lacking that perspective. So I feel sometimes that they don't get a clear, they don't have a clear vision because they don't know how the world existed before. Anyway, that's how I would see. But I want to pick your brains regarding the authenticity and what kind of businesses will be successful in the future. Are we moving towards a different type of economic offering? What Joe Pine, for instance, the godfather of the experience economy, he's talking about the transformation economy. Are we? Where do you see the companies being more prolific at, and what kind of offering? And then people, what do you see the young generations, our kids, where do you see them succeed in life? Should they focus on hands-on, very tactile professions, as I told you in one short call we had, I want my son to be a chef, to be able to feed himself and his family. I would die happily if he becomes a chef, despite the fact that my blue collar parents pushed me a lot and my brother to pursue a career, or to higher education, a career in certain professions. But I see now my generation is doing exactly the opposite. We want, to be focused on our human senses, on the body, on nature. So what is your perspective, both again in a business setting and in our personal life for the future generation?
Okay, thank you. Now, this is getting hot potato territory, so I'm going to be explicit. I believe that we're converging our personal and business lives anyway to a point. Okay, so I believe if you look at the greatest needs of corporations or companies now and for the future, if you were asking this question, or at least the first part of that question, to a leadership team anywhere, guess what they're going to say? If we said, what are the greatest things you're going to need in the 21st century? They're pretty much all going to come down to leadership. Mm-hmm. Right? They're all going to have lots of things about technology and resource and, of course, everything else. But ultimately, in human terms, we're having a leadership conversation now. So perhaps the super opportunity for, or even a talent for the 21st century, the elephant in the room, which they're not telling you about, is the greatest thing we're going to need is leadership. Now, leadership, true leadership, our ability to be strong, to be creative, and to be critical of the environments that we're coming from and going into, the problems that we're going into, strong enough to face them, and resourceful enough to see the opportunities, leadership, and then humble enough, and all the attributes of proper leadership, to get the job done in a creative, nurturing, protective way going forward. Now, these are it's almost like fighting talk, but it's not intended to be. It's leadership talk. The greatest challenge that we have as a society now is leadership times critical reasoning. Our ability to discern the technocrats and the bureaucrats and every other crat that is trying to attach an algorithm to your eyeball. We need, if you're asking me, if you're daring to ask me that question, I'm daring to say that we need to protect the children by making leadership an agenda item so they can listen to their own critical sense to help them learn to be a great chef, a great artist, a great software programmer, a great street cleaner, a great nurse, a great doctor, a great whatever they choose to be the best thing that we need for the future. And AI will help guide us on that way, but even then we need to apply leadership and critical reasoning to find out what the AI is capable of telling us is good for us. Now, we're entering into this dystopian envelope where we may find that we have to make tough decisions to self-limit, to digital detox, to go off-grid. All of those things will be interesting. And as a communication professional, but also a student of history and philosophy, we'll find that if you look back through now we talk about climate change. Let's look at this. Woke culture needs to be put in a conversation point too. And perhaps we need to figure out what's our relationship to political correctness. It's only a matter of 2 decades since if you were someone who cared about a forest, you were called a tree hugger. A tree hugger was a derogative, dehumanizing term applied to someone who cared about a bunch of trees being protected so a motorway may not go through. But a whispering campaign using clever languages like tree hugger helped fringe certain elements of climate activists. So then they were less worthy of a conversation and less worthy of rights and protection. And those trees had to be felled to build those motorways. That is history. That is a fact. So now if you're a tree hugger, what does that mean? And if you're a climate activist, what does that mean? And if you're being discredited by any account, who is discrediting you? We have to have an honest conversation about how we talk in society. We can't all be on one side of the conversation. And so we need to be able to have protected, welcoming, nurturing conversations. So it would be very crazy to say my future for business would be a place without a place where we can talk about uncomfortable items. And I'll go back to what I feel I know at this point. If we look back to look forward, the things that have got us to this point in civilization have been leadership and critical reasoning and lots of skill sets applied. Now, you hinted at it there with the shelf point for your son. I would encourage everybody to have lots of skills acquisition, acquire lots of skills. Get skilled or die trying, because then we can be armed in our minds and in our hearts to do a good job.
Yeah. You know, something very funny. I mean, we're running out of time, but let me just say this. It's very funny that basic skills, survival skills, such as lighting a fire, being able to lit a fire in the forest, right? It becomes such I know tourists are coming to Finland, and as you said, those tree huggers of the past that they were mocked and fringed in the society, nowadays they're becoming nature guides and teaching people how to light a fire. And then you have a bunch of tourists coming to Finland like, oh my God, good job, you lit a fire. We're so disconnected from things, and everything has become now a show. Again, world is a stage now, and a lot of things are happening. But before we go towards the end of the show, my guest before, Lucia Hirvi, asked a question to you. She wants to know, what do you enjoy most about what you do despite the routine of work or some difficult, boring daily issues that you might be facing? But what do you enjoy most? How would you say? And then give me your question to my next guest.
Oh, well, we're already in the room. What I enjoy most is thinking fast with people. It's connecting and enjoying and smiling and laughing and coming up with crazy big plans to make the world a bit better, one story at a time. I enjoy that. I can spend time on my own, but I like being connected with people. So I enjoy thinking fast with people. That's a joy for me. Whether it's all of the above, the things that I've thrown myself out there. I'm now going to be on the record freestyling and beatboxing, and you asked me to do it, I did it. I don't have to have a problem with that. So
How do you
that's my
connect yourself now in this red invisible thread between the shows with my next guest? So I will ask my next guest to listen to this episode, to listen to you beatboxing and asking them their question. So what would you
okay.
say?
Mike,
What do you want to know?
I'm throwing down the gauntlet to your next guest, and I'm going to say pick 2 words by asking you, so it has to be spontaneous, and then try and write or say a couple of silly, funny little rhymes, such as, you say a word, like, give me a word, any word.
So who will say, like, I will give them a word, or who will give the words?
Yeah, they're going to feel uncomfortable, but afterwards they're going to be smiling and happy they did it. But
So
they're
do you
going to
want me
squirm in the
to
chair.
pick up 2
So
words
any
for
word,
them?
1 word.
Do
Yeah,
you want me to pick 2 words for my next guest, and they will have
yeah,
to
pick
know?
2 words. And tell me, for example, they need an example. So give me a word.
Best and
Best,
guest.
best and guest. Well, best and guest sounds a lot like green beret. They're going to make a little poem about best and guest, and or 2 other words you give them on the day. And they're going to
Okay.
squirm and they're going to try and get out of it, but they're going to be glad they did it because if they're not smiling, I'll take them out for lunch.
But this is a challenge, but give them a question. Give them an actual
Okay,
question.
the question is, my question would be,
You can
uh,
pick 3 points.
what makes you laugh,
What makes you laugh? That's a good one.
and what can you bring forward? What can you bring forward for others with that? How can you share that
Great.
at
Thank
work,
you,
at home?
Hubert. Hubert Grealish was with me. Connections Unplugged. We unplugged and hopefully we untangled him a little bit. He's, sometimes I joke that I'm like Christmas light, very tangled, but festive and glorious. So hopefully I get a chance to untangle and the multifaceted personality that you are. Thank you, Hubert, for joining me.
Thank you, Chryssa. Thank you very much.
Have a nice rest of the day. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This is Connections Unplugged here using OneStream Live. Check it out for yourselves at onestream.live. And I will see you next week with another episode. Every Wednesday, we go live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube at 11 Finnish time EET. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.